Colorado County Commission.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll open the meeting with Commissioner Folkford for a little bit here.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And after citing the Pledge of Allegiance, I think it's fitting to read this letter that I prepared. It's, as many of you know, last Thursday was the 75th anniversary of the D-Day invasion. And in recognition, I'd like to read a short overview of that eventful day. On June 6, 1944, the Western Allies of World War II launched the largest amphibious invasion in history. And more than 156,000 American, British, and Canadian troops stormed 50 miles of Normandy's fiercely defended beaches located on the northern coast of France. The operation consisted of 6,936 ships and landing vessels, 2,395 aircraft, 867 gliders that delivered airborne troops. Some of the troops included 14 Comanche code talkers who relayed critical tactical messages in their native American tongue. The Normandy invasion began with overnight parachute and glider landings, massive air attacks, and naval bombardments. In the early morning, amphibious landings commenced on 5 beaches codenamed Sword, Juno, Gold, Omaha, and Utah. With troops from the United States landing on Omaha and Utah, Britain landing on Gold and Sword, Canada landing on Juno. During the evening, the remaining elements of the airborne divisions landed. Off the coast of England, 749 U.S. soldiers and sailors were killed during preparation for the D-Day invasion alone. The total Allied losses at Normandy estimated to be at least 4,413. It's estimated over 425,000 Allied and German troops were killed, wounded, or went missing excuse me, during the Battle of Normandy, which lasted until August. I would like to take a moment to honor those brave men and women who we call our greatest generation. And to ensure their sacrifice does not go unnoticed. Their numbers continue to quickly decrease, as most of them are in their 90s. As you watch and listen to their interviews, they all tell you they did not consider themselves heroes. Rather, they would like to be remembered for their contribution to a nation that secures the belief of freedoms we currently enjoy for all future generations. I know as I look around the room, there are many members in our families that made a contribution to this effort, whether it was on the battlefield or here at home. Short story about my grandparents. My grandfather was an immigrant from Norway. My grandmother was a French Canadian, and they worked in the Bremerton shipyards, where my grandma, believe it or not, was a welder. My grandpa was a pipe fitter, and they built and repaired naval vessels that returned from the Pacific. And I remember those stories that were passed down to me, as well as I know those stories were passed down to you. And I hope that we never forget that. I just want to close by saying we are honored by your sacrifice and the contribution that you made, and we salute you.
Thank you, Darrell.
You open for for public comment. Any public comment? Greg?
Craig Burns. I wanted to make it a point of public comment about a group, a Facebook group of Townsend Classifieds. It is a group that has more people than there are in this county inside of it, and pretty much everybody that's in this entire county. It's headed by an administrator named Katie Gruwell, and she is actively editing political content that's posted via the commission, via the city council, anything that has to do with the local politics. As someone posts onto her site, she's actively editing it, as in, she's not deleting the post, she's editing the comments that are made by deleting what she considers inappropriate or considers not relevant. And it completely changes the way that the conversation looks like. And it could certainly be a reason that we have such a communication problem here just at the space level. And why we have people come in just kind of spontaneously combust is because we don't all know what's going on. And this being right now the major line of communication in the county, she is strangely able to edit all conversations that have to do with government. And she does, actively. I watch her. And I'm banned from the site after releasing my report of the sheriff, which was verified. So she's has political interest of unknown, whether or not she's doing it on purpose or not, but it definitely needs to be something that is addressed, inquired into, as into the censorship that this woman is able to apply onto Broadwater County. She's censoring 6,500 people actively. And because it is the #1 and only site that the entire community goes to as far as goods transfers, just local messages, events that happen locally, like something at the park, it's where everybody goes to get information. So you trust that that is raw, pure information flowing to you, not being edited by an administrator that's actually giving you half of a story. So a lot of the comments that are made that have to do with stuff that's happened here are deleted. And those people's voice who have made that comment are deleted. Yet the people who didn't ruffle her feathers the wrong way, they're left there. And that's what we are left to see of the remaining conversation. So the scope of what's going on politically is never really seen by the entire, by everybody, because we have people who are actively editing how that looks. And that's a big deal. That's freedom of speech, censorship, and it's actively changing the way people look at how things are happening down here. Instead of having maybe 5 people that they can trust that spoke up and said, yeah, I don't think that's a good idea, those 5 people don't exist anymore. And so you don't even know if they're saying anything, if they moved away, because they're not part of these groups anymore, which are such a huge key part of our society right now. So I think it's something that the society right now needs to be looking, our Broadwater County in general, Townsend, the commission, need to be looking at this active censorship by Facebook, which is modifying the way that we see these issues, and then when we come here and converge, we're not on the same page anymore. And I believe that because Katie Gruwell is actively doing that, is actively influencing and causing some of these fights by putting kind of a gray cloud over what we all see.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Anyone else? Cheryl?
This letter I wrote you, and I'll give you a copy as soon as I finish. Commissioners, with regard to the audit publication statement in the Broadwater Reporter, Friday, June 7, 2019, it was cited the publication was in compliance with Montana Code Annotated 2-7-521. Item 1A of 2-7-521 states, after the expiration of the 30-day period provided for in the 2-7-515-1, the local government shall send a copy of each audit report to a newspaper of general circulation in the area of the local government entity. However, each county audit must be sent to the official newspaper of the county. After accessing the montana.gov site for audits and financial reviews, it revealed the audit report for fiscal year 2018 was received on March 26th.
That would have made the expiration date for publication no later than April 26, 2019. Commissioners, I request this 42-day failure to be recorded in the minutes and this letter be made a part of the records for this meeting.
Thank you. Debbie?
Mike, will you, on the agenda, it says revisit the planning board membership and meeting policy. Will you be doing that today? I know the agenda slightly changed.
Were we gonna do that today, Nicole?
Our planning board meeting isn't until this afternoon,
Oh, okay.
so I think it would be premature.
Didn't we talk last Monday about revisiting the member who has not been able to come to meetings and how to address that? You were gonna take last week to talk to him and see if our alternate member would then be an active member or would
Okay, I
be
guess
an
that was a
alternate.
misunderstanding on my part. I thought I was to speak to him today and ask our alternate to attend the meeting today,
Okay.
at today's meeting.
No, my intent, I won't speak for anyone else, but the reason it's on the agenda is so that it could end this morning, so it could have been addressed, so that we could ensure a quorum at 2:30.
Okay.
Debbie's only referring to, I think, the trust board, which is
Two
canceled,
separate
not the
commissions.
planning board.
Right.
And that was my mistake, I misread your email and put it
Okay.
on the 10th instead of the 17th.
Right.
It will be on the 17th, not a big
Perfect.
deal, but it has no bearing whatsoever on the planning board
Right,
discussion.
no, I understand. I just have I guess, a general question then about committees or, like the trust board, the fair board, I guess boards, not committees. And so this, I'm not representing the trust board of the Rod and Gun,
Oh, okay.
but myself right now. I applied, I sent a letter in January 24th, gave you guys copies and an email to Nicole's office that I would like to be considered for the fair board. I absolutely never heard back.
I don't recall ever receiving that, do
We
you guys?
never,
I don't either, Debbie, I'm
Okay.
sorry.
So I just wondered what the process, because the planning board discussion last week was very open in here. Was the fair board position ever discussed in here?
Do you want me to answer that?
yes.
I don't wanna speak for the commission, but I do know, I did receive your letter, I sent it on to the fair board
Okay,
for them to make the determination and the recommendation to me, and I have not heard back from the fair board.
okay.
So, because that's generally
I'm
how
just
that
trying to
works.
understand the process.
It generally goes to the boards, who then make their preference to me, and I take it to the commission, and the commission takes action on it. So I have not heard back from the fair board,
Okay.
and so I should have circled back around to them,
Okay,
so I will do that.
okay.
Hey, Nicole, do you,
Yes, sir.
do you still have a copy of that, of Debbie's letter?
I do.
Can you send that to us, please?
Yep, I
All
should.
right, thank you. I'm sorry, Debbie.
No, thank you.
Yeah,
I
I'm
just-
sorry too. I should
And I don't know if that
have
position's been filled, or, but I was interested as a person, my whole background is 4-H and everything and all that.
Perfect.
So that was my personal interest.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I just wanted to understand the process. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie.
I'm the commissioner, the liaison on that board, so I think that we'd love to have you, so
We'll talk.
we'll talk to the board. Thank you.
Yes, Shirley?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Last week, when you were asked what the routine was to inform the public of things you were going, what's my word? Proposals that were read and then to be voted on. And we were informed that the solid waste penalty phase paper the public had been informed. My question is, the first reading was noted in the paper that I got Friday night, and you've already passed it. So how is the public informed? Where do we get the information we need to have before something's passed in a week and we are told that the public's been informed?
I think that the first reading should have had the prior date of the meeting would have been, I believe, May, I don't have the calendar.
It's 12 days prior to that, right?
Yeah,
the first reading would have been like May 20th. Because we had to have 12 days between readings.
Was that published anywhere? That
It
we
should
would
have
have
been
seen
published,
it?
it was published in the paper, I believe. I know it was posted. I don't know if it was required to be published.
I think so, and I think it was submitted for
I
publication.
think they were both, it was submitted prior to, because we had to make sure we had 12 days between readings. I believe it was in the paper, like, probably would have been on the 10th or the 17th of those issues. It should have been the first reading, should have been advertised in those, on for that, because that was the second reading that we had the other day.
Was it ever published in its entirety? Does it need to be published in its entirety so that people reading the paper could know what the proposal was?
I don't know if it was published in its entirety.
Would that be a good thing to maybe do?
Mr. Chairman, the way that
Yeah.
legal ads are published is they refer to the document, and then anyone who wants to see a copy can either look on that website or come in here where it is posted for people to read
Okay.
in its entirety. So the answer, I guess, is yes, but the legal ad, the statute governing that doesn't state that the entire document is printed in the newspaper. So,
Okay. So it doesn't require that the entire document is printed?
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? Tim?
Just a quick follow-up. I guess I'm gonna say that's a little bit above my involvement there of what gets submitted from here into the paper editor. But I would certainly be happy to look into exactly what was submitted and what the situation is there, because it is the discretion of the editor what goes in there. Again, it's above my pay grade, if you will. As a volunteer, I really don't know, but I would certainly be glad to look into that for the people.
Okay.
To help make sure that we are on the front page of what's going on and how it's being disseminated to the people. And then I guess I have I guess it's on behalf of the people, citizen as well as the paper. About 3 years ago, maybe a little longer, a discussion was held at several meetings where the citizens were concerned about not being able to hear the discussions. The audio portion in not only here, but even when commission meetings were held up in the courtroom, people just really had a hard time hearing some people what's being said. And even with, our recording of this with our ability, it's been difficult at times to be able to understand and hear what's being said by certain individuals. Not picking on anybody, but sometimes they talk really soft or really fast, and it's really hard to hear them. So 3 or so years ago, a presentation was brought to the commission to consider a sound audio video system, and one of our local business people came in and gave a presentation to the commission to consider, which included prices of that system that could be used to make sure that everybody can have a full recording of the meetings. And there was never a decision made on that, so I guess on behalf of the Broadwater Reporter and the citizens of Broadwater County, I would like to ask that maybe this commission consider taking another look at that, and so that everybody can be on the front page.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. COS, Bernadette?
No, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll go with our 1015 Nicole Brown Community Development, Hamilton subsequent minor subdivision, request for final approval, revisit planning board membership, and meeting policy, Park Trails Ranch Estates.
Good morning. This on top. So this is the Hamilton subsequent minor subdivision. They are requesting final plat approval. This is in the southern end of Broadwater County. Highway 287 here. Riverview is the name of the road within the subdivision. That's why it's a subsequent minor. They're splitting lot 3 into lot 3B and 3A. There's an existing home here. slide up here so I can pass you the documents as we go over them.
Does this have I guess in regards to the park trails, does this have a definition or restrictions on the no-build zone?
No, it does not. Which is timely because this is why we're having this second discussion today. No, it does not. I think moving forward, I think it's going to be important to put a definition of no-build zone somewhere either in the regulations or on the plat. I don't know that to put something on this when they're coming for final, you can't add any new conditions onto a subdivision at this stage of the game. But you can make a statement in this meeting regarding the no-build zone.
So later this afternoon, this morning, we're gonna discuss that, right? And, I guess whatever it is that we decide, probably we'll set the precedent for all future no-build zones until we
Correct.
actually get that sorted out in our subdivision.
In our regulations, yeah. And because it is not defined anywhere in Montana Code annotated either.
Right. Okay.
Yes, Bernadette?
Just a suggestion too, in the past, we have put a definition of a no-build zone, which I have no problem adding to this because working with the client, I know what his intentions are. But in the past, we've done no-build zone, no building as defined in the subdivision, the Broadwater County subdivision regulations. Because of course, they don't want a building, they don't want a house, or, them to build a big barn or something between them and the river. So I could print on sticky paper, no build zone, and then a definition saying no building as defined in the Broadwater County subdivision regulations, because the definition of building is in our regulations.
And I think you want to include septic systems in that as well. We don't want to have a septic system in the no-build zone.
That I don't know
Yeah,
what their
right.
intentions were on this
I guess
one.
this is for our discussion
Right.
as we move forward, so. Okay, thanks very much.
And I think something too to keep in mind, I don't want to get ahead of myself on the park trail, but I did have a conversation with Mako Land Use Attorney Tara Depew regarding no-build zone. And as long as there's evidence in the record to back up what that no-build zone is. And I can tell you that there is evidence in the record, the purpose of that no-build zone was because these tracks did not meet the 3-to-1 ratio, the length being 3 times greater than the width, and also because with the Hamilton's home being here, they don't want their view obstructed. So I think there's evidence in the record to support this no-build zone, and I appreciate that Bernadette is willing to add something to the plat on behalf of her client, because again, you can't make that condition at this point, but if they're willing to add that, they certainly can. And I think that would further support this no-build zone.
Sure.
Moving on. Condition number 1. Plans for sewage treatment and water supply shall be submitted to the Montana Department of Environmental Quality and the Broadwater County Health Department for review and approval. The certificate of subdivision approval shall be filed with the final plat. We have DEQ approval coming around. And to further back up this no septic system, since they do have DEQ approval and the system is outside of the no build zone, it would be very difficult for them unless they received a variance. Or an amendment, I should say, from DEQ. Number 2, coming around, the applicant shall contribute 2/50ths of the cost to upgrade the existing road, Riverview Road, to Broadwater County subdivision road standards for a number 1 local road. It shall be required that they obtain a current estimate. And the reason for that being that this is a subdivision road, and it has been our practice if there's a subsequent minor and or a major on a subdivision road, they will need to obtain a bid for the improvements to said subdivision road and then pay 1/50th per lot. So this, even though there's an existing home there, they're still paying the 2/50th because this is a 2-lot subsequent minor. Number 3, a signed and approved Montana Department of Transportation right-of-way agreement equal or greater than the county subdivision road requirements, which are currently at a width of 24 feet, must be received. So this is an email from MDT stating that that approach is adequate for an additional home. Number 4, a weed management plan for the existing development shall be submitted to the county weed district for review and approval. All specifications and requirements of an approved plan shall be met. So this is a signed weed plan. However, if you note on the cover letter, Jessica Bushnell, the county weed coordinator, stated that she will go and re-inspect the property in the spring, as it was during our winter months that the weed plan was submitted. I'm just going to read 5 because I have nothing to pass around. Number 5 states the applicants will be required to submit the final plat drawings in electronic format to Broadwater County in ArcGIS, AutoCAD, or MicroStation format. Additional materials may be requested by the county in electronic format to facilitate review of application materials. And I've received that email. I have it stored on my computer. Number 6, the applicant and the Fire Protection Authority having jurisdiction shall use their best efforts to draft a fire protection plan specifically for this subdivision in accordance with Broadwater County subdivision regulations. The plan shall be equally acceptable to the FPAHJ, the applicant, and the county governing authority. The plan shall adequately address the fire risk analysis, all findings of fact, and appropriate mitigation measures. In the event the parties are unable to come to agreement by the final plat submittal, the applicant shall become eligible to provide the per lot cash in lieu fee for water supply as may be defined in the Broadwater County subdivision regulations in effect at the time of submittal. You'll see you have a signed and approved fire plan and no additional comments from the fire chief. Number 7, plans for the location and installation of individual mailboxes shall be reviewed and approved by the United States Postal Service prior to installation. So you have a letter from Three Forks Post Office. And number 8 is the plat itself. The final plat shall be prepared in accordance with applicable state survey requirements, Montana Subdivision and Platting Act survey requirements, and the county subdivision regulations. Plat has been signed by examining land surveyor and the surveyor. Number 9, the book and page reference to the restrictive covenant filed with the county clerk and recorder shall be indicated on the face of the final plat. In addition, restrictive covenants, revocable or alterable only with the consent of the Board of County Commissioners, shall be placed upon the property and shall provide for the following. A, notification of the potential health risk from radon concentrations and that such risk can be evaluated through soil tests and mitigated through radon abatement techniques incorporated into structures. B, a notification that all dwelling units within the subdivision should be constructed to specifications which meet or exceed equivalent provisions in the applicable state building code for this seismic zone, which is Zone 3. C, any additional replacement or relocated utility lines shall be installed underground in accordance with county subdivision regulations unless otherwise determined by the utility provider. D, any exterior lighting shall be directed downward to minimize visibility beyond the property lines. E, a waiver of the right to protest to join a special district for the purpose of providing community water and/or wastewater treatment system improvements and/or maintenance. F, a restrictive covenant binding the landowner, any heirs, successors, and assigns, and all future owners of property within the subdivision, agreeing herein to hold Broadwater County harmless and indemnify Broadwater County from all claims, demands, obligations, suits, causes of action, damages, and liability, including the county's costs and attorney's fees, arising in any manner whatsoever out of or relating to the existence, use, operation, repair, and/or maintenance of the following. Subitem 1, earthquake fault zone and any seismic activity, and Subitem 2, water availability. G, all cats and dogs must be restrained, penned, or otherwise under the control of their owner at all times. H, a notification of the presence of agricultural operations in the vicinity. I, each lot shall be maintained in a clean, attractive, and weed-free manner. Noxious weeds must be pulled, sprayed, or cut prior to seed maturity. J, a waiver of right to protest joining a rural improvement or maintenance district for the purpose of road maintenance, mosquito control, or equitably funding parks and maintenance of parks. K, address numbers shall be clearly marked at the driveway entrance to each lot and be easily identified from the road. L, a notification that lots in this subdivision may be subject to impact fees if in place prior to lot sales. Number 10. Prior to filing the final plat, the following improvements shall be installed or otherwise guaranteed. A, any necessary improvements required by the stormwater drainage plan, weed management plan, or approach permit. And B, utilities abutting and available to each lot. So I'm sorry, there was 2 different documents here. So that's 10A, showing the stormwater drainage locations. I did speak with Sean Rowland, and it's acceptable to install those drainage facilities at time of septic installation. Because the purpose of these storm drainage basins is to catch any water flowing, I'm trying to remember how he explained this to me, because of impervious material, i.e. a home. So it is acceptable to install those at time of septic installation and once the home location is determined. And then 10B coming around shows where the utilities have already been installed and there are utility easements in place. (11A) Prior to filing the final plat, the applicant shall A, provide proof that all taxes and special assessments assessed and levied on the property are paid for the current tax year, including any past delinquencies.
So what point do they sign this, Nicole?
Excuse me, at the time that they sign the plat and
Okay.
record it all, because it does need to be notarized, and
Right.
so it all is done collectively in the clerk and recorder's office.
All right.
Am I good to move on? Cut up a little.
Yes.
11B, provide, and this is the final item. 11B, provide documentation, an abstract of title or plating certificate showing that the applicant is the lawful owner of the property with the apparent authority to subdivide the same, showing the names of lien holders or claimants of record and the written consent to the subdivision by the owners of the land, if other than the applicant, and any lien holders or claimants of record against the land. You'll see there that Mr. and Mrs. Hamilton are the lawful owners of said property. And that concludes the list of conditions. Thank you.
Is there a motion for the approval of the Hamilton minor subdivision?
This is a pretty straightforward minor subdivision. Of course, this is the second time we've seen it. So I will move that we grant final approval to the Hamilton minor subdivision.
Is there a second?
And I'll second the motion.
Motion been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Take a vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed,
Aye.
same. Motion carries.
There's my special pen there, if you would sign all 4 copies, please.
This one? No, that one?
There's only one special one, I'm sorry. I should have brought 3. It's that special. I only have 1.
That is special.
Here, Art.
Oh,
Oh, aren't you good?
so prepared.
I'd like to also note, just back to what we were talking about, I just got thinking that the covenants of this specify the no-build zone also. In the covenants, it says the no-build zone will have any type of either permanent or temporary structure, no recreational business equipment or property allowed in the no-build zone. You can't even, you can have 10 hens, but you can't have the chicken house on the no-build zone.
I read that.
So the covenants do define the no-build zone too for them.
Mhm.
Does-
All right.
So
does
that's
it have a-
helpful.
Does it have anything in there about the shed that already exists in the no-build zone?
No, it doesn't, but it's pretty dilapidated. I mean, it's, just needs to be carried away, but you showed it there.
Okay, that's- where did that-
There's your pen.
I don't want
Nicole.
You gotta make sure you don't mix
to
those
get
up.
them mixed up because
Thank you.
Special.
They're special.
Oops. There we go.
Thank you.
And there's a pen underneath.
All right, moving on. So with this planning board member position, I guess that was my misunderstanding. I was hesitant to bring someone on board this late in the game when we have a meeting today. Was how I recalled our conversation going.
From a decision today, which is why we had the alternate, you're gonna send that
Mhm.
paperwork, did that get done?
Yes, and the
Okay.
alternate is planning to be here today.
Okay, so my concern, and the reason that it's on the agenda, and, you know, misunderstandings happen, it's not a big deal. But my concern is that we have another failed quorum. Do you have confirmation from your board members that you will have a quorum today?
I have confirmation from 3,
Okay,
yes.
All right.
And just this morning, I plan on going back up and contacting the other 2 just to make sure that I will have 5 there. At the very least, 3 is a quorum.
and Chad,
Mm-hmm.
will you follow up? I believe it is okay as long as, I don't know what the rules are with alternates, I've seen it done, I don't know if that's in statute, I don't know if it's just best practice, I don't know if it needs to be in the bylaws. Will you follow up on that perhaps with Mackenzie McCarthy at MACO?
Mhm.
She can let you know if he can step in if there's a vacancy, or if he needs to be advised sooner,
Okay,
just so that we have as many bodies on the board as possible. 3 is the minimum,
Mhm.
but really, for something this big, we should have all 5.
we should have it, absolutely.
If we do have the member who has not been coming to meetings not show today, I think we need to follow through with conversation at the very least, and then follow through with getting a solid group of 5 on that board. Because when one person is habitually not showing, it puts an added burden on the other board members, and nobody looks good when you plan a planning meeting and you don't have a quorum, and then you bring a subdivision to us and say, yeah, it didn't get planning board approval. So I'm very concerned about this, and I just think we need to follow through. It's in your bylaws, we're following the rules. There's nothing more than us just trying to follow those rules for the good of
Absolutely.
the entire county.
So I will confirm with
Okay.
Mackenzie. In the event that I only have 4 members available plus an alternate today, can the alternate be a voting member at that point? Correct? I
Correct.
just want to make sure I'm understanding this. Okay,
Was Ross and Chad both planning to attend today?
yes.
Oh, good,
Mhm.
okay, good.
And I assume Ross is one of your affirmatives?
Yes.
Good, I'm
Mhm.
not surprised to hear that,
Me neither.
yeah. And I'm not surprised to hear that Chad will be there as an alternate. I think that's excellent. I think
great.
we've taken a step in the right direction.
Well,
I
yeah,
think so
and
too.
it's important because this is kind of a big deal and he needs to be informed.
Mhm.
Um,
And this is the introductory meeting for the planning board. So he would be learning, these new members would be learning at the very same time as the existing planning board members.
Right.
So,
That's good too.
Good.
so 2:30 in this room.
Will you be here at 1:30 as well, just to sit in?
I'm sorry, what is the 1:30?
That is the Wheatland Infrastructure Grant,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
and it's connected.
Okay, I will plan to be here.
Thank you. That's all I have on that subject.
Okay. Park Trail Ranch.
Park trails.
So just for the public and also this commission, our dilemma with Park Trail Ranch Estates, there was a no-build zone put in place through an extensive drainage on Park Trail Ranch Estates. This subdivision was given final plat approval, I believe, in 2007. Just now starting to infill. Lots are selling, people are constructing. So with this no-build zone being there, the question is, how do you get to the back part of the property if there's a no-build zone that cuts through the center of 5 of the lots? Again, no definition in our regulations, no definition in MC on what a no-build zone is. I poured through Park Trail Ranch Estates record, its entire file, to see if there was something in there identifying no-build zone. I cannot find anything. My email conversation with Tara Depew, make a land use attorney, this would have to go back through subdivision approval. They would have to submit these lots for subdivision approval, even if they only had one condition, that a culvert or a bridge was engineered and constructed appropriately, because otherwise this county has no controls over what they're putting in that no-build zone, the integrity of it, whether it's going to work, whether it's going to, stop water flowing and affect up and downstream water users, or not necessarily users, but land users. Daryl and I met with the realtor of these parcels, and I think there was some misunderstanding on what the information she received versus how we were looking at this here. I think it was a very good meeting. The realtor suggested that maybe we could have a commission-required covenant that if indeed a landowner wanted to build on the back portion of their property, they would have to have a culvert or a bridge engineered and constructed but approved by the homeowners association, and make that a commission-required covenant. So subsequently, I had a conversation, a face-to-face conversation with Tara on this issue. Tara, again with Mako, land use attorney, and she said as long as there's evidence in the record to support this. So we kind of circled back around. There's nothing in the record to support that, to support a commission-required covenant, because there's nothing in the record identifying how they would ever get to that back portion of their property. What is the definition of this no-build zone? The slopes on it are quite steep. We do have regulation, subdivision regulation, that says a driveway cannot be greater than 12% slope. However, we don't have building codes, so we don't have someone out there enforcing or regulating the construction of driveways, only subdivision roads. So I'm at a loss as to any other option than Tara's original advice to do a subsequent minor subdivision on each of these lots. Again, with just the one condition, because there's no evidence in the record to support a commission-required covenant for an engineered and constructed culvert and or bridge to be approved by the homeowners association. Nothing that I can find anyway. I will look through it again. So I'm certainly not asking you to make any determination, and I don't think that that's why it's on the agenda. This was simply for information purposes, so we all know where we're moving forward on this. I can also discuss this with Corey Swanson, our attorney, and see if he has any other ideas. Unless you have some other direction that you would like me to look. But my path that I'm going to choose at this point is to continue to look through the record again. I'm going to tear it apart again and look through the application and all of the materials to see if there's anything in there that would support that, because I do think that that is a viable option. Obviously, the homeowners in that area, they want to maintain the integrity of this no-build zone, of their subdivision, of the land. So if they were the ones to be responsible for signing off on the, and I don't mean signing off legally, but through the HOA, similar to house plans. There's many HOAs in the county. You have to bring your house plan to the HOA and they will give you approval.
It was my understanding that they do have a fairly active HOA there.
That was my understanding too from our conversation, yeah. That they would be involved. But the question was not whether or not we could put that burden, if you will, on the HOA. It was whether or not the record would support this.
So the record meaning at the time of application of the subdivision,
Or the findings of fact and order document, or the staff report, or the minutes, anything. Basically anything that I have. This is not Park Trail, but this when I have a subdivision, every one of them has an extensive file like this of minutes and paperwork, documents, letters from the public, anything. So I just need to carve out a few hours to go through it, looking at it from this perspective. Is there anything in the record to support the HOA signing off on these engineered culverts and or bridges?
I have high hopes that the planning board in their review would have had some discussion about that. Of course, I don't know, but if there is nothing in the record, is a variance an option? Is a variance from the commission required covenants an option?
I just don't know where your authority would lie at this point.
Okay. Because it's already been approved, is what you're saying.
Correct, because it's already been given final plat approval and it's already been recorded.
Were you here at that time?
I was, but not acting as the planner.
Okay. So we're all kind of in the dark. Yeah. Well, I'm curious what you'll find.
Yes, so at this point, that's going to be my plan of attack.
So where does any liability lie? Does the liability lie with the homeowners association? If this guy puts in a culvert and it doesn't handle the water backs up, washes out his road, you have a huge dam of water come down and washes out the highway. Where does the liability? Does the liability fall on the landlord, or does the liability fall on the homeowners association? And if it falls on the homeowners association, they're not gonna be willing to take on that liability.
Or would it be the engineer that approved it?
Yes,
That's what I'm thinking.
that would be my assumption as well. You know, I'm not an attorney, so I can't give legal advice, but that would be my assumption, that if indeed these crossings, whatever that might look like for each individual landowner, if they're engineered and signed off by the engineer, similar to if they were going through the subdivision process right now, we would require that the culvert or the crossing be engineered and constructed, which then would mean the engineer submits the plans. Once it's constructed, the engineer then signs off that it was constructed according to the plans. The engineers generally carry insurance for something like that. I don't know time period, so I don't know, you know, if it's 10 years, 20 years. I don't know.
So the other alternative was, what was the other alternative, having to go back through the subdivision process just for those lots?
Yes, just for those lots, or each individual. You would have potentially 5 one-lot subsequent minor subdivisions come before you, with one condition. One condition being that the crossing is engineered and constructed.
And also it was gonna be expensive, so I mean, that was kind of one reason we were trying to find an alternative to.
Right. It would cost county fees approximately $1,200 per landowner. That does not include any survey fees, because they would have to have a survey for that lot, because it would be a subdivision. However, being the alternative to not being able to utilize all of your property,
You know,
Are those lots still all owned by the developer, or are they all owned by individuals?
they've all sold,
They've all sold.
according to the realtor, yeah. So I think, you know, honestly, what we're trying to come up with is the best solution for these property owners, these individual property owners, as well as the protection of the county and other property owners. So how do we find that middle ground? There will be an expense, you know, there'll be an expense of engineering, you know, that's not cheap.
Have expensive engineering, then the expense of the amended plat. And
Right, we could be in the ballpark of $7,000 to $10,000.
yeah, that's kind of tough.
Right,
Okay.
but it's not necessarily the burden of the county to come up with this. It is the burden of the county to find the answer. And what does that mean, and how can we help these people, you know, utilize all of their property? But that was the way that the subdivision was platted, similar to this, with a no-build zone.
Well, hopefully, between the commission and our staff, we can find an equitable solution for these folks.
That's my hope.
yeah. Yeah, I have high hopes for that one. Yeah, if you could keep us
I will.
in the loop. Do you want this on the next agenda? Is that too soon, or should we give it
No,
a couple weeks?
I will not be here next Monday.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you have if you're meeting on next Wednesday. If not, but that certainly wouldn't be too soon. I mean, my plan is to carve out, it's gonna take me 2 hours, but I want a solid 2 hours to be able to go over everything, electronically and on paper, so,
Okay,
you know, it shouldn't be a problem for me to get to the next agenda as long as it's not the 17th.
okay. Sounds good.
And if you have any other ideas, I'm certainly open to this. So.
Ah,
I think it is unfortunate that all of this just, you know, really is a part of the fabric of these subdivisions and moving forward. You know, I don't know if this was given consideration at the time. Obviously now, we're looking at these developments and these no-build zones a little differently because of the situation, so as long as we're learning from it.
So the other discussion on Park Trails was the access onto the highway from
Mhm.
one of those lots wanted to change. Is that up to the MDT, or is that, because that was a condition of the approval, was that there was only gonna be 2 accesses to the highway, right?
And that one we can amend that commission required covenant. Because it is a commission required covenant, sorry.
And didn't we also discover that the road is on that person's lot?
It is, yep, the easement is on that person's lot.
Yeah, so that farm road is, the easement is on that person's lot.
And so I think that there would be a strong argument for why you could amend that commission required covenant, basically. And so when this comes up again, I can bring you language to amend that commission required covenant. I believe it's lot 1, you know, and it would say something along the lines of, with the exception of lot 1, as long as they have MDT approval. So if they did want to use that access that's existing, they would have to get approval from MDT, because it's not our jurisdiction to tell them that they can or cannot access onto the highway, other than the commission required covenant states no access other than via the internal access road.
Yeah, but MDT realistically wouldn't have a problem because the approach is already there being used, right?
Right, I just think that it would be the courteous thing to do to make sure that MDT gave their blessing to it if we're going to increase traffic on it.
So is that now a shared driveway?
Yes, it would be, because their address point would be at that location, if all went to that direction.
Does the adjoining landowner has a legal easement that goes through that property too, so they can't shut, the person that gets that lot can't shut that landowner off from going through that easement, right?
Correct. And currently, it's just a farm access, it's not to any residents. There's not an address assigned to that point currently, which would tell me there are no structures beyond there.
Okay.
But if they did decide to build, yeah,
Sure.
it could be a shared driveway.
We did kind of discuss that,
Mhm.
as access behind that for all those other lots,
Right, if it came down to
if
it.
it came down to that, so.
Another thought, I was asked by a very brilliant citizen that we have why and what an engineer could bring to the planning board. It seems to me that an engineer and the way that their minds work, very detail oriented, would have looked at that plat during the discussions and said, hey, what about, and brought out issues that probably others wouldn't have. So just to solidify for that very brilliant citizen, I think an engineer's mind on a planning board is essential.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, please keep us in the loop what you
I will.
find.
I absolutely
have
will.
hopes.
Me too.
Yeah,
Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you. If you get an answer on the alternate question too, would you let us know before the meeting this
I will.
afternoon?
Yeah,
Thank
I'll
you.
go and make that call right now.
Okay, thanks.
See, we'll go to our 11 o'clock department budget submission, maintenance and safety.